19. Apologies for the delay. Thank you for your patience. We have a full board tonight, and I think we'll just launch right into the continued public hearing for the site plan review and special permits for 129 Park Street. Good evening.
So, I believe when we left off, the reason that I guess it was determined not to close the public hearing, because we've reported to the board that we really have no further information to give, but the board wanted to keep the meeting open primarily to discuss conditions on the draft decision. That's my recollection. So, I mean, our position hasn't changed. We don't have anything more to offer, but of course, we'll address any questions the board may have on any topic. As far as the draft decision, we did receive it late Friday. We did not have an opportunity to review it until late yesterday, and we are not prepared to discuss the substance of the conditions tonight. There is a lot of material there. What I am going to do is I'm going to address it with my clients and get something back to Barbara and John, okay, in substance, so that we can have a meaningful discussion. Going through it tonight is certainly not going to be something that we can address intelligently, because there are a lot of issues that we may agree to, but we don't fully understand the way or why they were drafted or why they were included. And I really think that it would behoove us to first have the conversation with the author and refine it before we have public comment. I don't want to get into a debate with the board or with the public as to why we're objecting, because we may not be objecting, or if you know where I'm coming from. So that's where we're on tonight, and I don't know if there was any other open issues. I thought there had to be some conversation about the operations, or that was.
So just while we're still kind of getting our heads on straight about the overall meeting, I'll go through my list.
Okay.
There's, I believe, some discussion of the sewer situation to some degree.
Yep.
An update for everyone. There are 2 new special permits that were added to our process that were discussed as being a subject of presentation tonight or discussion in some regard.
Mm-hmm.
And then the potential discussion of the draft decision, which was issued to the public, to us, to you, as you said, on Friday. I guess I'd like to ask Barbara if you could help us understand the process that we're in regarding the drafting of the decision. Obviously, this first round was generated by town planner and town council and issued out to the world. It's now out there. It is just a draft. Now we've heard, obviously with time constraints and so forth, we understand, you need appropriate amount of time to respond. But I guess I'm just curious about how that conversation takes place, if it's appropriate for feedback from the applicant to be presented here in this forum or in another forum. What's your expectation about how that works?
Sure. So having a draft decision serves a couple functions. The most important function is its framework, especially with a large and complicated project like this, to just start discussing how the board is looking at each of the special permits and each of the substantive areas. So it's primarily a tool for the board to organize its thoughts about all the issues raised. It's also useful, to the extent the public hearing remains open, to get the applicant's feedback on what it sees as how it views these conditions. But it's still up to the board how to treat each of these conditions. It can certainly take into consideration the applicant's thoughts or suggestions on the draft, but primarily the draft exists so that the board can have public deliberations on the permit decision and the conditions that it would impose if it chooses to grant the special permits. So I think to the extent that there is feedback from the applicant, I understand that they're not prepared to go forward now, but that that feedback, it should occur in public so that the public has a sense of the discussion and the board's deliberations.
And just a further question, like, I understand that the applicant's not prepared to discuss, and that's totally appropriate. But given that this is really all about gathering information at this stage, would it be appropriate or inappropriate to hear feedback from the public on the draft decision in advance of, since all we're doing is hearing information, not
Yes.
deliberating or making any movement forward, right?
Yes.
At this stage?
Yes, both the applicant and the public should feel free to make written submissions to the board, or to discuss it publicly to the extent that the board wants to entertain that discussion. So that applies to everybody. So if council wants to, after reflecting on the draft decisions, submit the applicant's own proposed conditions, that's perfectly appropriate. That becomes part of the record, and the board can discuss those suggestions and the suggestions of any member of the public as well.
In terms of order, would it be appropriate to hear, if the public was here and was looking to comment tonight, would it be appropriate for us to hear their comments in advance of hearing from the applicant? In my mind, it seems neutral.
I don't have any, I don't think there's a best practice on that. I mean, I think the board should hear on who's ever prepared from the public or from the applicant, who's ever prepared to discuss that tonight or comment, should be allowed to make that comment, and that should continue at the next public hearing as well. Mr. Chairman, does that adequately answer your question?
I think so. I mean, any other comments from the board? I mean, it was my thought on this was that we would not keep the hearing open long enough to hammer out the final text of all the conditions, but that we would issue the draft, as you say, the framework, give everyone a chance to give their feedback, and probably maybe then decide to close and finish out, given input that comes in. So I don't think it's necessarily, if there were to be feedback from any party tonight, I don't think the intention is for us to resolve any of these issues, but rather just hear, take note, and we'll move on, take that into consideration.
Right. It's still sort of information gathering by the board. It's just more organized around the draft that's been offered. So I would see it in the same category really as any substantive topic that the board has taken. I don't think enough that much done. I think so I can hear what they say.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a different opinion of that. I think that, but I'll defer to council. I think that until, it's best to have a model that we can work from to make efficient use of time. At this point, this is posted on the web. I've got some good email comments that we can, I can submit, but I think until, the basics are hammered out, I think it's not an efficient use of time, in my opinion, but I respectfully differ.
Well, how much time to spend on it and how to manage that process is the discretion of the chair in consultation with the board. I'm not saying how the board should proceed, I'm just saying that is the function of the draft decision, but the chair can certainly conclude that the board's time or the public's time would not be well spent, too much time might not be well spent. That's really the chair's discretion.
The applicant obviously has to go through the draft decision, their comments and everything, so there could be a rewrite, reworking of what the draft is currently, the version of the draft is currently out there. So I think, in my mind, taking public comments based on the current draft might be a little counterproductive, since that draft might change in the next couple of days. Depending on what the applicant submits. So I think it might be more efficient use of the time if we get feedback from the applicant, get a working draft put together based on whatever back and forth you have with town council, and then open it up to the floor.
That would, I guess what I'm trying to avoid, I think, would be issuing another draft. I mean, that seems like that just gets very burdensome, and to manage and keep track of who's reacting to what version and so forth. And the intent, again, is not to, write this as a group. So, I mean, I hear all these points. Well, I was gonna table the issue, I think, or propose that we table it till later tonight. But
Oh, okay.
I was just gonna say that, given that we do have two other pieces to talk about, new items, maybe we just deal with those and then come back to this.
Sure. The only thing I would add is just that it's important that at some point the public get the opportunity to comment on the draft as well.
Absolutely. No, that is key to the intention here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, before we close, there's two small issues that, to my mind, haven't been resolved. We had some brief discussions on them, and before the meetings closed, I wanted an opportunity to speak to those issues. One was Building J, the elevation, and the other was the alignment of the driveway on the north side. They said they're going to go back and look at that. So those were two things I wanted to have a chance to discuss or comment on before the meetings closed.
Okay.
Thank you.
So maybe we can just let that sit for a minute. We can talk about the other issues that we have, new business, and then return.
Oh, and I'm sorry, and the other items, the special permits, those are the lighting and parking that we're gonna.
Correct. There are
Okay.
the two additional special permits that were added. The last hearing, relief from signage regulations and relief from parking standards. They need a presentation of some kind. That was my understanding. So that's one thing that I was expecting to hear on tonight. We can start there. If we want, just for the sake of thoroughness, give you a chance to state your case on those two issues, so that we're clear on what those permits are for.
I will give it my best shot. Unfortunately, I didn't put the correct file in my briefcase, but I do remember the substance of each of the requests. If I can, you got them? Perfect.
Thanks, Bill.
Save the day. I believe at the last hearing, I suggested that for the most part, okay, these special permits, the substance of what we're requesting and the reasons why we are requesting these two special permits are set forth in the applications with some degree of specificity. The easier of the two is the signage. What we're looking for is a special permit to allow internal lighting. It's our belief that internal lighting was openly for the building signs and the square type letters that are going to be affixed to the buildings, that it was made clear during the public process, both at the town meeting level and when we were discussing this with the planning board in connection with the concept plan, that we made it clear that these lights were going to be internally illuminated. Unfortunately, the concept signage plan never did actually use the word internal when it was finally approved, and so we determined, it was suggested that we did need that special permit because internal lit signs are prohibited in the town of Maynard without a special permit. We would ask the board to consider the information that we provided in the application, and to note that it is very consistent with the concept plan, that it is essentially state-of-the-art for these kinds of retail establishments to use that kind of lighting, that kind of lighting is a lot less obtrusive to the neighborhood, and it's very suitable for the intended use. And again, like I said initially, it was something that we thought we made very clear is what we were proposing at town meeting and during the presentations to the planning board previously, to the Board of Selectmen, and to town meeting. If you look at the approved concept plan, the signage concept plan, which I don't have a copy of here. I think it's also clear from looking at the plans and looking at the renditions that we provided to the town and to the various boards, that it's obvious that there was no external lighting involved, that all of these letters and all of these signs were to be internally lit. And we think that it's an appropriate way of doing the signage, the building signs, and we would ask that you consider that. I don't know if you have to add anything to that.
No, I thought something up.
And we obviously would answer any questions. I believe we've made presentations about that signage through our lighting engineer on several occasions also.
Questions or comments? Seems to me that, given that we are, we have been asked to weigh the merits of the special permit, that we, regardless of what was or was not included in the concept plan, we still are required to file the same criteria that we obtain a special permit. We can obviously continue to deliberate this down the road. Any comments from the public about internally illuminated signage in the project? Yes.
Marie Gunnarsson, 119 Parker Street. So we have an ordinance, and the applicant was aware of that. And if they just pushed ahead without making note, like they did with the pylon, then I believe it's most, the special permit process is definitely required. And I don't agree that necessarily block letters in a building necessarily have to be internally lit. I've seen plenty of examples of signs where they're backlit or other things, but if they're just painted or plastic or whatever it is, and they're not internally lit. You see them. Also, with the concept plan, the lighting concept plan, the pylon, for example, shows the letters, not the whole sign, so not the entire panel is lit, but just the letters within. Also, on this page, I'm not sure what page number it is. And unfortunately, it's in the background, but it's quite apparent to me and anyone else who looks at it, there's a store, Bed Bath & Beyond, and the lighting is glowing behind the letters, which is indicative to me of a backlit sign. And backlighting is typical of the nicer establishments. Glowing panels are typically like dollar stores and other cheaper, less classy establishments. So I don't know why we want to make something look cheap. But, and so the Stone Plaza does not have the internally lit signs. And to the point that the concept plan maybe didn't show lighting fixtures, the applicant himself has said in other answers to other questions, the concept plan doesn't show every detail, and so I don't believe we want, and in terms of the criteria for special permit approval, I don't understand how internally lit signs will enhance the neighborhood character and social structures being in a residential area. At least that criteria. So I don't know, why the applicant would pursue internally lit signs knowing what the ordinances are. I don't see how they enhance the character of the establishments or the neighborhood. And I believe that the applicant's own own plan could be easily construed to say those are backlit signs, and where the pylon exists, that's not even fully illuminated. That's just lighting the letters to the degree necessary to have visibility. And I think that's my feedback. Thank you.
Go ahead, Brent.
I have a couple of questions. Just to refresh my memory, did the lighting study include the light emitted from the signage?
The photometrics?
Yes.
No.
No.
And were there any restrictions on hours that the signs will be illuminated? Were any proposed, or would those be 24 hours?
No, not 24. I think they're,
Whose hours of operation?
I think it's in the, right, it's in the hours of operation.
Okay, so
Yep.
that applies to the sign on buildings as well?
Yep.
Okay.
But as presented as internally lit.
Right.
If they're gonna be externally lit, there is no time frame from the town.
Okay.
So what we proposed to the town was internally lit with restriction on hours.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question, more of a definition question. For my 10 years of working in urban planning, the backlit signs are called reverse channel lit. They are technically internally illuminated, under my experience. That is not a backlit sign is an internally illuminated sign. It means that the lighting is all under one contraption. And that is not separate from the definition. Is that correct for Maynard, or is that different in Maynard?
Right now, they're in, the building commissioner's rewriting the lighting plans to address that, as well as internally illuminated lead signs. It's, as I mentioned this board before, it's a change that they feel is time.
A little bit of a town meeting. So just the
But for
fact
what
that
it
they're
is-
rewriting it doesn't mean again.
Well, it means that they recognize that they would, because
Right, but we'll go to
change. It does have to go to a vote at town meeting, correct?
I mean, for what it is right now, whether it is a translucent reverse channel lit or a opaque halo lit or a glow-through box sign, that is all considered internal illumination.
It's been a general interpretation.
Okay.
Right, it's, if you recall, when we did Mill Lane, we kind of ran into that, with some of the lighting, but the definitions don't drill down that far yet.
And from what I recall, the pylon, when we hashed out the pylon, that was a specific, I thought it was halo, which is maybe one
Halo.
theory that you had talked about, so that is more prescriptive than just simply internally illuminated.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize for my lack of awareness and ignorance, but I was referring to, like, obviously the big sign, the glowing red or blue or whatever it is, opposed to the sign like you might see here that has color, and in the evening, there's some sort of lighting behind that outlines the sign, and you can see it. In many places where I go, you see that type of signage where like you say, I guess it's a channel where it glows
Reverse
behind,
channel lit.
where it glows behind the sign, and that seems to be what they're showing here in this image, or like you see in Stowe where they're using a lighting fixture and then illuminating it from the front with the center. But the type that I was referring to was not the type that shines through, but from behind.
Right, and so I mean, I guess this is sort of, it's pinpointing the exact issue that Bill was alluding to that we're rewriting, which obviously doesn't apply to this proceeding, but just the fact that there are multiple techniques, some of which might be okay, some of which might not. The applicant has asked for the ability to use, internally illuminated, which seems to, be a catch-all for a couple of different techniques.
So do we have to specify, does the planning board then, in their decision and conditions then?
Well, I mean, I guess we could ask them if they'd be willing to be more specific about what type of internal illumination they'd be willing to do, or if you are indeed asking for the ability to use any of those techniques that fall under that category, then that's what we need to consider that as their request.
Question, do Do any of your proposed tenants have signage requirements as far as how they want them illuminated?
I mean, I can tell you that, based on the other centers that we have, they all go with, it's not a box sign. Does look cheap, I agree. They are individual letters, they're on a channel, and there's typically, LED lights within the letter, and then there's a colored plexiglass piece that goes over that letter, and it shines through the color of the plexiglass. The other halo lighting, you have push-through letters, and then it's lit behind it. It's extremely expensive. I mean, it looks nice, no doubt about it, but the reason why you don't see it that often is because the tenants don't want to pay for it.
There's a variety of different ways for them to be able to do it. It's not necessarily push-through letters. They're die cut just the same. It's the same plexiglass panel.
Yep.
At least in like I said, the 10 years that I've been working with different companies, large companies included, it's the same exact plexiglass piece that they would put in. It's just a different type of plexiglass that they choose. Versus a opaque or a translucent plexiglass, they choose an opaque plexiglass. It has a slightly smaller system that it gets mounted to than that one that is kind of die cut in.
So where does the light come through?
The
The
light
opaque?
doesn't come through the panel. You have it's like if you were to die cut, just make that a little less dramatic. Die cut a letter through one solid thing that you can't see through, and it glows behind. So what happens is you have the reflection of the light off the building,
Right.
and it would have this kind of halo effect around the lettering. And the light comes from a LED track
Behind it.
Just a question, it would seem that potentially we could potentially, approve this with conditions that certain types of internally illuminated signage would be excluded, perhaps. Does that make sense? Is the mechanism to kind of hone in on what it is that we want?
Yes, if the board issues a special permit approving internal lighting, it can specify the kind of internal lighting it wants to see. I mean, I would defer to the town planner, for some detail on what would be consistent with, other things in the town or other concerns that the board might have. But from a legal perspective, yes, that can be done.
The bylaws specifically provide the planning board with authority to impose any conditions or waivers that they want relief from sign regulations. So we could put, for example, if there's a specific sign that the board did not want to see, for example, internally box illuminated signs. Sure.
Yes.
Trish Saunders, 11 Dutton Road. It seems to me that with other areas related to variance from the current zoning related to signs, extensive presentations and negotiations happened with their signing experts and with the town signing experts. And the planning board really knew what they were giving approval for when it came to the entrance sign. You weren't trying to sort of limit things and not know, like, they said this is what it would look like, and the planning board said, okay, we feel okay about that. I'm not certain why that level of detail isn't happening with these other signs, and rather than trying to eliminate certain types, sort of theoretically, why a clear signage plan for the buildings isn't simply being proposed. The developer has had weeks to prepare that, wasn't prepared to talk about it last week, still doesn't have clear examples of what they want this week, and it just feels easier to say specifically, this is being proposed and the planning board approves it or not, rather than, you think you're eliminating all categories that don't feel good, but then they have some other one that maybe still doesn't feel quite right, but you didn't know to eliminate it. So I would just suggest that they propose a signage style that allows you to feel comfortable with it or not.
Well, thank you, and I guess maybe to wrap up my understanding of why we're dealing with this now. My understanding is that there's still, even if we grant this, there still will be hearings for all the signage down the road, but that there will be a blanket approval of lighting, potentially, if we grant that. Is that,
The lighting has already been approved with the signage. This is only for the building signs that you require a special permit. And internally lit signs are allowed in town on special permit. There's no prohibition against internally lit signs. They're- No,
That's why this is.
it says except on special permit, except by special permit.
that we had the discussion that rather than having to issue a special permit for every single sign that you want to internally illuminate,
Mhm.
do it now, and give you the opportunity to use that lighting technique on any sign, and then you come back with the sign plan for each individual one, when you know exactly what they are, and prove that it's the right size and meets all the other aspects of the signage bylaw.
Yeah,
That-
that would typically happen at the building, at the building permit.
But this is the point, this is the point at which,
I'm sorry, you're right. It would only come to us if there was a special permit required.
Or if we needed more than what the board approved, let's say you approved 50 signs and we had
Right, right.
54 tenants, we would come back before you guys.
Got it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may though, this is the time for the board to decide whether it will allow internally lit signs other than the pylon anywhere on these buildings.
Right.
That's, the question of whether a special permit is required has been decided. A special permit is required. So the question is, I think, does the board have enough information about what it is that the applicant is proposing to make a decision about whether it will grant a special permit that allows internal.
Bring it back on the first, I don't need to be here.
Understood. I was trying to address the question as to why we're not seeing specific proposals.
Well, again,
I guess that's my point.
to obviate that, because in all candor, we've had our sign person make at least 2 presentations, which included these signs. But again, this is a separate filing. We can request that he be here next week, specifically addressing these wall signs and what we are proposing and what we're asking. And that'll give, I think, even the public the specific detail that they're looking for. And we just thought that detail had already been provided, but if the board wants more information, we'll have the sign engineer or the sign consultant here at the next meeting that he's available, and we'll provide more detail. We are looking for a special permit, universal, to allow internally lit building signs. That's all that we're looking for. And if you want more detail, and I agree with Barbara that, yes, you can condition it on the type of, you can put any conditions that you think are appropriate in a special permit. So we'll tell you specifically what we're looking for.
I mean, obviously don't want to belabor anything necessarily. I do think, though, that if we are looking at subdividing this broad category, that it might be appropriate to have more, visual, descriptive and visual parameters for that, so we understand. I mean, obviously, I don't know, if we were to condition that no box signs would be allowed, for example, it would probably need to say more than box sign. We need to
Well, it's
describe
just-
it
yeah, yeah.
in some language,
Agreed.
That might be appropriate, Mark.
I think it's important also for the board to recall that Mark Rosenshine and the applicant worked offline to create attachment C, which were signage bylaws, kind of a sub-bylaw to be included in the decision itself. It does lack visuals, I agree, and there's no question about it, but the other details pretty much spelled out in what we've already done. And that's 3 pages.
You're referring to the framework for the
For the-
square footage of
That's
the
correct.
building
That's
signage?
correct. So it would be, that's already been worked out by the consultant and the board. So, but the lighting would be the only issue that was addressed, unless they want to make a change to this,
Well,
what was proposed.
we could still make changes to what's proposed, could we not?
Oh, sure.
And additionally, if we haven't seen graphics, I mean, I'm probably more familiar with what the size of the sign is going to look like in a building, but to see these different signs as proposed, because they're different than what was proposed in the mock-ups, specifically whatever the smallest category of sign at 40-something square feet, whatever it is, that's larger than what you've seen on any of the mock-ups. It may be worth at least having one mock-up of every tiny maximum sign size for buildings. Does that make sense?
You're going into the size conversation or the lighting conversation?
What she's highlighting is that there have been changes to the size conversation since we last saw graphic representations of the same.
If we don't have graphic representations, it may be hard to make a clear decision, not just with illumination.
So what you're suggesting, Samantha, is that in order for you to make a decision on whether or not you would like internally lit signs, you want to know how large they're going to be and how they're going to be positioned on the building, is...
No, not in relation to the illumination component.
But that's the only thing that's before us, is the illumination component.
We have not decided anything, so technically everything is before us at this point. Just because you've made an agreement with the consultant doesn't mean that's the final thing that's going to happen. We still can have some debate and discussion about it. We don't have an updated graphic of what those maximum sign sizes are from A, B, and C. I think A and B were related to, or were similar to what you had proposed in renderings, but C is almost twice the size, I believe, from what was proposed for the Cole's Pizza place or something. So it may be helpful for this board and for the public to have an idea of what visually those will look like, to be able to give any feedback.
Okay.
Unless everybody else feels comfortable with what we have.
I think she doesn't make sense to resize the sign. So that's what's going to be part of this request.
Yeah.
We'll loop back to that. Going back to the lighting conversation. From what I'm hearing, there is, and I agree, there's a relationship between size and the lighting technique. To me, it sounds like the applicant is asking for the ability to provide internally illuminated signs, all encompassing. We are, I've heard a couple folks raise the issue, and it has been brought up in earlier in this hearing that there is one technique in particular, the halo lighting, that has been deemed acceptable on the pylon. That was months ago. That's and now I am suggesting that it might be worth subdividing this group lighting into groups that could be identified independently, and really in the spirit of in speaking for myself, that I have a willingness to accept perhaps some of those, but not others. And
You mean the types of internal illumination?
yes. So in order to define what those types are, we need to probably turn to Mark and have some kind of, examples brought before us and some language. And maybe Rick has some of that stuff. If he's starting to dig that out, there might be some research already that exists in the town that could help us to refine our conversation further.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the applicant a question?
Please.
In none of the renderings that your architects didn't they have signage? I'm trying to remember, and I didn't bring it all with me.
Yep.
But didn't they show signs on some of the renderings they were illuminated? I'm
Well,
having trouble remembering.
So all the boards we brought that had the building signage on it, they were depicted as internally illuminated signs, but the word internally didn't end up on any of the boards written.
But the renderings didn't show the illumination shining? I'm just trying to, the board's
We-
asking, they're looking for examples and they don't have any.
We believed it did, but it didn't say it, and there's been many suggestions here that just because we believed it showed that it was internally illuminated, it wasn't really clearly stated that it was internally illuminated.
Thank you.
Although during our presentation, And during some of the minutes of the meetings, that we can point out, it was discussed, but I think we're beyond that now. The board wants to see something, and now we'll produce what they want to see. I think it's,
Just wanted to clarify, the supermarket lighting, that was spelled out.
Right.
Just to make sure.
We had used their plans from another building and it was a complete set of sign plans.
Right, so we will have, and we can dig those out, so we can actually determine what category of internally illuminated signs that would fall into. I have, some sensitivity to wanting to not have multiple types of illumination on the site.
Yeah, we'd want to do the same.
our presentation will suggest to you what we're asking for, and then I guess from there, you can say whether it's suitable or not agreeable on it.
Just like you did with the pylon sign, it would be possible to bring in some material, you know exactly what type of sign that you were planning on.
Yep.
To me, it seems the easiest thing to do, especially the pylon presentation.
Bring a letter.
Bring a
Yeah, I
letter.
mean, if you guys are willing to specify what it is, that will help, because I think we're getting caught up in this idea that there's
Right.
3 or 4 different ways to do it, and so.
Well, it's important to also remember that all these signs, like the ones Sam described, these are all illuminated signs. They're internally illuminated, so right now, there's a multitude of signs that may be desirable, but
But we're only gonna bring the ones we're proposing, okay, and then we'll move from there if they're not acceptable. No, that's what I'm saying, I mean,
No, we'll bring a couple samples so there's some options.
and then we just tie that to the internal sign. I mean, I think that makes more sense than most.
So, do we need the sign guy, or would it just look like if I bring a couple of letter M's that show different types of internally illuminated signs?
Sorry. I think given the focus that I think the public will have on this, they probably having the appropriate folks in the room might be the best.
Okay. All right.
Megan, do you have
Oh, I just wanted to ask, the signs you're gonna propose, they're gonna be just like the supermarket signs, is that, or similar to what they do?
Well, the supermarket,
Sorry.
the supermarket had a couple different types. They had some box types, which we don't want any box
Yeah.
signs. And then they had some channel letter signs, which is what we are proposing.
Okay.
Internally lit channel letter signs.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Public comments still open?
Yes, please.
My name's Steve Kulik, I'm on D Street. And I sat in this very same chair many meetings ago when we first started talking about lighting. And I think, Greg, you're the only one I recognize. I think everybody else is kind of new. But I too am strongly against internally lit signs. Because you gotta remember one important thing. This project is surrounded on 3 sides by residential neighborhoods. And if we start putting bright internally lit signs, especially facing Parker Street, Field Street, and Rose Hill area, it's gonna look terrible. And I don't know about you, but I don't like to open up my shade or pull up my blind and see a great big red lettered, or yellow lettered, or orange lettered Wendy's sign, or whatever, especially facing Parker Street. Let me ask the applicants, do you have plans in putting something facing Parker Street on a building?
There's proposals at the pad sites that front along Parker Street would have signage facing Parker Street.
Could all the signs on the buildings up close to Parker Street be as you turn on the main drag going in instead of facing Parker Street?
The way they're laid out on the site plan, you wouldn't see them because they're kind of in a row. So if you pull in the main
They'd be
entrance,
so close to Parker Street, you just have to look up the entranceway and see them, right?
well, you've got like 4 buildings that are stacked up one behind
Okay,
another.
so if you're gonna face Parker Street, then I'm vehemently against internally lit, because put yourselves in our position. How would you like to open your blinds some morning and see those types of signs facing your house? I think something that's more softly lit. I'd rather look across and see a white glow from that type of a sign than seeing a big gaudy red, yellow, or green I go by Wendy's every morning to the gym at 4 o'clock, and you ought to see, take a ride by that, it looks like a circus. There's a yellow one, there's a red one, and it lights up the whole area, and it's just ridiculous. I believe that something's gotta be done for the neighborhoods. We haven't had a lot done on our side of things. And this is one thing that we can really, you could really help us out with, because we're gonna be dealing with traffic congestion, and everything else that goes along with this project. At least you can do for us is let us open our windows and open our blinds and not see these internally lit signs. And let me make one last comment. Whatever the applicants decide to do and bring in and show the board, can we find a place that utilizes this lighting so we could go look at it and see if it's something that we can live with? Do you have that in some other projects that?
Well, one of the types we're proposing, we have a project in Northborough, which would be the closest, and the other type, I'd have to ask the sign guy where he's done the type that Samantha's talking about.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the applicant a question? From memory, and I was just looking at my file, and I don't have a concept plan in front of me, but all of the other parcels that are adjacent parking, most of those are served, the front door of those, from memory, are served from the inside of the site. Like,
Yeah, there's no.
Even though there's parking around, they're served.
Right.
Just something to consider, if the applicant's proposal is to have building-mounted, internally illuminated signs, maybe that's the place to put it, and if you have a sign that says, I'm gonna make it up, an error, it's not illuminated on the Parker Street face, something to consider, that,
Yep.
to appease the applicants, because they'd still have the illuminated, people can't get there from Parker Street anyhow, so they have to come into the site, and once they get in, they see the illumination and they go to the
Right.
building.
Yep.
Something to think about.
Okay.
There's the pylon.
And that's right, you get recognized by the pylon as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if I can just, so we understand, I think, what is forthcoming regarding signage lighting. I don't know if you feel like you communicated what you're interested in seeing regarding updated signage graphs, size graphics.
Just updated building renderings of 3 different types.
Of the sign types.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's like from 3 different size buildings.
Yeah, the tier
on
1,
the-
2,
in
and
the
3.
attachment, just having updated graphics so that the public can understand as well as the board would be helpful.
Okay. All right, let's move on to parking.
Oh, okay. The second special permit requested relief by way of special permit from certain parking and landscaping requirements of section 6.1 of the bylaw. Again, the written application spelled out specifically what relief we were requesting. And the reason that we are requesting this relief is that during general discussions, during the, essentially the post-filing of the site plan application phase, it became an issue that the town wanted to see more landscaping between Parker Street, okay, and the parking area. And in order to accommodate this, we needed to reduce the number of parking spaces, not by a lot, and again, the application spells out the number. And in reducing the parking spaces, we needed then to eliminate certain of the raised islands, and we needed to relocate or plant trees not within the raised islands because we were trying to increase the vegetation throughout the entire parking facility. So this special permit is asking for relief because the section of the bylaw says that this board has the authority to grant waivers or grant relief from strict compliance with that section of the bylaw upon special permit. In the application, what we have done to alter the site a little bit was that we have moved all the buildings so that each building is at least 100 feet from Parker Street. The original site plan that was filed, there was some deviation. So when we moved these buildings back to create more landscaping, okay, between Parker Street, and the buildings, we invaded the parking area. We are eliminating 64 parking spaces from the original site plan, and that reduction is required. In order to reduce the number of parking spaces by that amount, our engineers have suggested, and this is what we are proposing, that in front of buildings R1 and R3, and I don't have but throughout there, we have specified in the application where we are eliminating certain raised islands. And from 1 to 2, from 2 to 1, or from 3 to 2. And again, the application specifies exactly where we want to, and the plan now shows exactly where we want to have these raised islands. Some instances we're suggesting that we have no raised islands, and again, specified on the plan and in the application. The minimum island width in areas for internal landscaping is 2 feet at the narrowest spot where 10 feet is required. Okay, so there are 2 islands that are this width, and one within the parking fields between R1 and R5, and the second parking field between R9 and R10. So again, we're looking for, in certain instances that are specified, a reduction in the size or the dimension of the parking islands. We are also looking for relief under section 6.10.9 of the placement of proposed light poles. We have placed light poles within landscaped islands where feasible, okay, but there are certain areas within the parking field that this is not feasible, and so that we have asked to allow the installation of light poles in those areas. And then again, that's the essence of what we're looking for. And the reason that we are asking for this special permit, which is one that we didn't anticipate needing, was because we worked with the town engineer and the building inspector to come up with a parking field landscape plan that they deemed more appropriate than what we had originally proposed.
And the site plan that is currently submitted assumes that this will be granted.
Correct. Okay, it shows this request, yes.
And I think it's, from my understanding, it's fair to say that if you were to, well, the trigger for this was that the previous site plan was in conflict with another aspect of the code that Rick and Maynard and Bill have picked up on, and everyone honed in on this solution. So this was a negotiated.
But this is something, yes, that we didn't agree that it was inconsistent with the bylaw, but this was a solution that was satisfactory to us and was proposed by the town and acceptable to us. And it was through the building inspector and Wayne and Bill that it took several weeks to iron it out.
Okay? Questions? Questions from the public?
Just a quick question. I'm not sure which buildings are. I didn't see any. I'm looking at the plan, I don't, maybe my identification is.
Which building are you talking about?
Well, we're talking about them all. I mean,
That's what they
the
said
application,
last night.
Yeah, I don't know why.
the application refers to R1, R3, and I don't know.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute, okay, so, okay, ours are the big back building.
No, they all have ours now.
Oh, well, they all are ours, okay,
Right.
so which ones were you referring to?
Well, if you have a copy of the special permit application, we are referring to various areas behind R1, R3, R9, R10.
It's all over the site.
It's all over, yeah. Yeah.
But my recollection at least is that the hot spot that kind of triggered this, Wayne helped me out, was in front of the 2 retail pads in the northeast part of the site that are closest to Parker Street that they needed to be pushed back, and they kind of all rippled through.
No, that's exactly what occurred. Okay.
This was a compromise solution to solve that setback issue.
Great, thank you for explaining that. We can move on to just get an update on where we are with our sewer improvements conversation from last time.
Sure, be glad to, Mr. Chairman. So I'm happy to report that I think we have a solution to our, I guess, our discussion. Let me kind of reflect back and give you a full recap. So a couple of months ago, we coordinated with the applicant and our consultant, Stantec, and we had Stantec do an evaluation of the downstream sewer from the site down to the Powder Mill Road pump station. Stantec gave a presentation to the board in which they identified 9 items that needed to be either remedied, modified, et cetera, in order to deal with I shouldn't say deal with, in order to adequately offset the impact of the development. And there was some impacts there that the town needed to deal with one way or the other. We've been discussing those back and forth with the applicant. As of yesterday, we've come up with an amicable solution in which we believe that the applicant is contributing a certain amount of percentage in order to offset their contribution for the sewerage from the site. And so we will be, I have a memo that I'll have Bill deliver to the board if I could, just for the record, and that kind of documents what we've asked Stantec to do over the past several months, the comments that were formulated back and forth between the development consultant and Stantec, and how those have been resolved, and actually our final recommendations based on contributing percentages. So with that, we will come up with that solution that's agreeable. We will be working with the 2 attorneys to formulate a reasonable condition that you guys can put in your draft and in your planning board approval that will explain that. So that'll be forthcoming over the next week or so, and that'll be in your packet to review at some point.
Gary, did you have anything you'd like to add, or?
Wayne covered it fine. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions.
I don't want to get into the minutia of the
Sure,
board.
has questions. There's a lot of different pieces and so forth that we talked about, but the bottom line is, we feel that the impacts from the development are adequately addressed with the agreement that we've come up with, based on Stantec's recommendations.
And I guess, oh boy, I know we're just looking at this for the first
Sure,
time. There's
understood.
We can obviously review this and come back to it when we deliberate, but, do you guys have anything to add on this piece?
Only, like Wayne said, we need to refine the appropriate language for a condition that encompasses this. I was informed today that in fact they had reached an agreement. Lawyers weren't allowed, so I have no idea what the agreement was.
Why I got done.
That's why it got done, and then we'll take it. But no, I mean, apparently there's an agreement, and we'll figure out how to make a proposed condition that covers that agreement.
We still have several questions about the appropriate way to condition that. That's why I want to have a discussion. We all want to have a discussion with the 2 attorneys to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the way the wording is. But the agreement's been reached as far as percentage of contribution, et cetera. So for my situation, the sewer issue's been resolved. It's just letting the 2 attorneys figure out how to condition that so that you guys can approve.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Chair Saunders, 11 Detling Road. For the benefit of the public's information, because we don't have access to the document, and because we're going to be bearing whatever portion the developer isn't bearing, do we know what the percentage is?
These percentages actually vary depending on the location of the system that needs to be repaired or replaced or upgraded.
So maybe just for the purposes of clarity, we could know that there was a system-wide improvement estimate that was given
Sure, if I
last
could,
week, and of that, how much is the developer
if I
covering?
could respond to that. So, based on the attorney's comment, the developer is contributing roughly between 20 and 40% to the flow downstream of the development, and they're contributing 53% to the repair costs for the items that need to be repaired.
I don't think I get it,
So they're contributing the flow, they're contributing about 20 to 40% of the flow, depending on time of day, et cetera, and they're contributing 53% of the repair costs for the items that are deficient.
So you're saying they're contributing more than their fair share, is that what you're?
From our opinion, yes.
Okay. It's just from, you know, the public saw the presentation, and, you know, and there was concern from the public as well as the board, and it would be at least comforting to me to see something or hear something
so-
that says, you know, other than just, yeah, we did it, trust us, it's all taken care of.
So let me qualify my statement earlier. We reached an agreement hours ago.
Okay.
Okay, so as a result, we haven't had time to let the two attorneys vet the appropriate way to have that language included in the conditions so that the board understands it and the public understands it without, I'll be perfectly candid, without asking 4,000 additional questions that we already know the answers to. All right, so we're asking, let us develop this, it'll be in the conditions, you guys will have the opportunity to review that, you know, when the board does.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the board or? Okay. Well, I mean, I guess. Sorry?
Operations, hours.
Operations. Oh, is that a new information
Well,
that's
we
being
had a
sent?
new updated one here, operations manual, you want to go over?
Sorry?
We have a new operations manual, the updated operations manual.
Nothing's changed, we were gonna continue to talk about it.
Oh, do we have ones handed out tonight, Tom? That's what I expected,
No, nothing changed from last week. I mean, we talked about it, they said they wanna talk about it some more. We did,
We had, for example, I'll tell you like the water quality is in the new one, the testing is in it, the one you presented last night.
that was all in there.
Last-
Yeah, that was on last week.
Right.
I mean, the only new news we have on the hours of operation is we have the number of, trailer truck deliveries from Price Chopper.
Do tell.
These are trailer trucks, these are not like the Frito-Lay truck and stuff like that, strictly trailer trucks. These are approximate groceries, 7 loads a week, frozen foods, 5 loads a week, perishable foods, 7 loads a week.
What was that last one?
7
Perishables.
perishables
So 7 grocery?
This is per week.
per week, so 1 a day, basically.
That's pretty consistent, if I may, that's pretty consistent with your first description from your tenants, that they're about 3 per day max.
Yep,
Right.
right. I mean, that's just trailer trucks, so then you've got the Frito-Lay, the bread guy, the milk guy, and those, you know,
Box trucks.
they're on, yeah, and those are on a route, they just, you know, they're not gonna hit Stowe, Sudbury, and Concord, and then go to Boston, come back to Maynard, it just doesn't work. They're on the route, and they come and they go, there's no really way to control that. But this is the stuff that comes from Price Chopper's warehouse up in Schenectady.
Thank you for.
We just, because I went back quickly, it sounded like there were 3, 7.
No,
grocery-
there's 7 grocery loads per week, 5 frozen food loads a week, and 7 perishable
Okay.
loads a week. And these are estimated, you know, all depending on sales.
So that's basically
Right. Yeah.
3 a day for the most part.
Well, I think we've heard a couple of aspects of how this draft that has been issued needs to change, will change, new conditions that are still being crafted, and so forth. So, I mean, there's an argument out there, and there's an argument in my mind, or one side of my head, that says, why don't we just make those changes again, revise, and come back together when everyone's prepared to comment. That's one proposal, I guess. If others say, if anyone was prepared particularly to make comments about the draft, that could be short and sweet, to the point, with the understanding that we're going to pick this up again next time, then I think we could entertain a short hearing of those. But I don't know, please chime in, guys. I mean, if you feel like we could go back to the drawing board, revise a few things we had talked about. One thing that Barbara and I talked about prior was actually folding in the operations table from the O&M manual into the draft decision rather than reference it, and so forth. There's definitely things that could change, kind of high level stuff. And I know that the board, and really anyone, has had an opportunity via email to provide initial feedback, so some of that feedback could get incorporated into a second round. How do you guys feel?
The only concern I have is I'd like to suggest that if anyone from the public is here and would be able to come at a time when we're prepared, so we respect that and we give them that system.
We would be asking, I believe, that we resume this discussion at the August 8th meeting to give us enough time to address, and exchange information. So that would be what we were proposing. I know that we also have a meeting scheduled for August 1st. And if we can arrange for our signage person to be here for the 1st, I would go forward with the signage on the 1st. But again, I won't know that until tomorrow, whether or not whether we can have that
Yeah, I've
presentation
sent him an
ready.
email tonight.
Okay, well, as soon as we know, and then I would suggest that the 8th then will give me a time to get my comments to John and Barbara and to the town. I mean, I have no problem with everybody seeing what our comments are, we just haven't crafted them. Okay, it's a matter of, and I think some of them will require explanation. And we also would like to, as we have done with many, many other issues here, we often have conversations without council, okay, between town planner and Bill and Wayne, okay, about certain of these issues as to why or why not they should be revised a little bit. And I think it'd be tremendously more helpful for everyone to work off of that proposal than it would be to go through conditions now that next week may not even be requested or suggested, or may be agreed to. I mean, it's just...
Sure.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of reiterate something I brought up at the last meeting about having a really consistent way to go through this draft decision. I'm a little concerned that if we were to start today, there'd be repetitive comments as we kind of publicly announce the order of how we're going through things. So that's my take on it. I think we need to be really succinct in tackling this piece, because otherwise I think it will go on a really long time.
So I guess, in summary, what I'm hearing is that the applicant requests that we table this issue to the 8th, and that if we can do lighting next week, we will. If we can't, then we'll have to push that to the 8th as well, and we won't really have a reason to meet.
I'll be out of town on the 1st, but we can have town council, so they would be available.
So we'll just wait and see what we can do.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, if we're going to continue it, the date certain, if we say we're going to have to do it.
well, I would ask that we continue it to the 1st, and then, right, we let you know in advance, we'll have someone show up and continue it again.
Right, so we will be continuing to the 1st regardless tonight.
Right, and we'll have our comments back to the board and to council and to everyone on the decision well in advance of the 8th. I mean, we're not going to give them to you at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
So I guess...
August 1st will be downstairs.
Sure. So I guess then it remains to ask the the public, if anyone has a conflict, is unable to attend on the 8th, and is prepared to make brief comments on the draft that's been issued, we will certainly hear them now. You're also, of course, welcome to submit comments to Bill via email for the record. That will make its way to us for our consideration. Or we can all just sit tight, wait for another round, and pick it up in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Yes.
I'm uncertain about my schedule. I expect that I should be here. But as long as we can submit comments, I have some substantive comments, but I also had just editing comments that I, thought might be helpful, so I'd like to send those.
Any comments are welcome.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may ask, if we can have copies of public comments also so that we can address them in advance, that would be very helpful, rather than just reacting to them that night.
Sure, that makes sense.
I think there's some internal consistency.
Well, it's a rough draft. I mean, this really is the beginning of the process.
Yes, you are.
Right, good. So I'm gonna move that I'm sorry, yes.
Could I just make a request that we be able to have access to the documents maybe at least 48 hours before? That was the new draft.
I can put anything, or through Bill, we can put anything online.
As we get.
Yes.
Correct.
Sometimes we don't get it 48 hours.
Well, maybe that should, I guess I'm requesting that it be a goal,
Yeah.
because we want to be able to have time to
Yes.
read it and thought.
Yes, I can certainly, through Bill, can put the revisions that we make, just based on things that I do for the board, or editing. I can get that through Bill online, well before the hearing. As more comments come in from the applicant, everything that Bill can is available. I'll leave it to him to, I don't know what I usually do.
I guess what I'm requesting is that it sounds like the developer wants to weigh in, you want the public to weigh in to get to like draft 2.
Mhm.
And draft 2 is what's gonna be discussed on the 8th, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so could draft 2 be available to the public 48 hours before?
At least. My comments will be to you.
Right. It's just, I may get some comments from the applicant that I don't necessarily agree with and wouldn't be reflected in the decision, but the applicant on the 8th might want to
Right,
discuss it.
discuss it.
Sure, that's fine. I don't feel like I need to see every red line that happens in the next 2 weeks, but just,
Right.
I'm just
The next
asking that we have
version.
time to read it before the.
Yep.
Yes, the next version, we will put online, the bill we can put online more than 2 days.
Right, and I acknowledge this draft was, I'm just saying,
Right, no, I
it'd be great
agree.
if the next one was as well.
Thank you.
Do you have those copies that I asked you to? I wanted to introduce a condition that is proposed, and I just wanted to do so in the open hearing, so we'll hand this to the, sorry. I'm gonna read one, the applicant. Obviously, while the hearing is still open, this has to do with requiring that the buildings achieve a minimum 30% reduction of indoor water consumption against a calculated baseline. The details of this are attached to the proposal, and it is indeed a proposal that I would like to put forth as a condition into the project, and we can chew on that for the next couple of weeks. Anyone else have anything to add about to continue this?
Mr. Chairman, I have 2 questions, if I could, for the applicant. If you want, we can wait for Bill to come back. But just trying to close out a couple of things that were still kind of theoretically open. We were waiting for a confirmation from Bowler on a couple of minor drainage things, drainage edits, and a revised set of plans, and a revised set of landscape plans. I would like to kind of get these reviews checked off and done. So if you could just give me an approximate time, Danny, on when they're gonna have that. that
Billy might know. I thought there would be.
We'll hold
this
off.
week, but he may know.
Yep. Those were the only two issues, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Could you do me a favor, chance and email me a copy of this file, so I have that for distribution?
Okay, so I move to continue the public hearing for site plan and special permit for 129 Parker Street to August 1st, 2017, 7 PM in this building. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where did Billy go? Did he leave? No. Oh. You had enough? Do you think, well, do you think we can put that sign presentation together for next week or not?
We won't know. We
Till
talked to
tomorrow?
Boyd. He's got all the information, it's just a matter of, I think what we'll do, Angelo, is present what the town meeting, so the boards, the original boards, as far as sign locations, like, it shouldn't be a lot. Right, I know. It's not a lot.
Well, just let me know tomorrow.
Oh, good.
I was planning on coming back for the first, and I was hoping I wasn't, but if you're not gonna be here, I wanna be there.
I got a list. We'll talk about that.
What's this?
Rick.
Who?
Rick.
What is it?
Green. You guys, you meeting with Wayne?
Yeah.
We just gotta run these by.
Tomorrow morning is Ashland. So I'll give you, I'll fill you in on what happens. You know, you never sent me the, remember I asked you for that three-phase?
Oh, yeah.
Well, tomorrow, I'll fudge it tomorrow.
I can send it you first thing in the morning.
Yeah, except I gotta be in Boston.
What time is it?
10?